Okay, hello everyone. So happy to be here. Thank you to all of the other presenters who spoke on Microsoft. I'm so glad that I got to catch Jupiter's presentation as well. That's really good timing and a perfect segue into what I want to talk about today. And thank you to Lightworks for the invitation. Really loving working with you and the rest of your team. So please feel free to put questions in the chat as you have been doing. My amazing colleague, Chris Mayola, is online and he can help moderate questions, okay, as the chats come in. Okay, so if we take a breath and we think about how we are over 2 years, I'm sort of scared to do the exact math, but I know it's been over 2 years since the onset of the pandemic. And we have crossed what I refer to as the cultural chasm into video adoption. I've been in the video conferencing industry for over 20 years, and most of that time has been with various device partners, manufacturers in the video conferencing industry. And I promise you that every single year, the leadership in my company said it would be the year that video conferencing would take off. But instead, it literally took a global pandemic for everyone outside of this call that we're having today to realize what it is that all of us do for a living. So we're after 2 years since the onset, and now we're at this cusp of hybrid work. And I think that we can agree that there is no going back to the way that we worked before the pandemic. What's really exciting about that, this doesn't happen very often. So this is a really unique opportunity for our partners like Lightworks and our device partners like Jupiter and others to help define what our customers' permanent solutions are going to look like for hybrid work. And that's exciting. It doesn't often happen in a career where you get to help invent what a permanent solution or environment is going to look like. That being said, we are at a long-awaited inflection point, right? So from when we go into the office to why we work in the first place, employees have a new worth it equation, and there is no going back. What's cool is that we are all learning this together in real time, and we're all figuring it out together. I'm Amanda Stewart, and I manage, oh, was there a...
interrupt, are you still supposed to be on the first slide?
Yes.
Okay, perfect, sorry.
Okay, so I'm Amanda Stewart, and I manage distribution partners for the Teams Room business for North America at Microsoft. And today, what I'm going to share is much less a pitch around Microsoft and Microsoft Teams, and much more an overview of and good summary of the millions of data points that our research has helped us collect in where hybrid work is going, where we see collaboration in the future, and how to make hybrid work work. So I need everybody to hang with me because I have an hour to speak, and I promise I'm not going to take that whole hour. We can do some time for Q&A at the end. But the bulk of what I'm going to talk about today is data about the market and what the trends are and what we are doing at Microsoft and what we are recommending our customers and organizations in the marketplace do to be successful in this new hybrid work, okay? And then we'll do, of course, I'm in sales, right? I have to do a couple of slides of pitch at the end. Okay, so as I mentioned, employees have a new worth it equation. Think the amount of digital transformation that we have seen in the last 25 plus months. If we think about March 2020, life pre-COVID, the way we lived and the way we traveled, the way we consumed, the way we worked and collaborated with our peers and clients, the standardized hours that we all worked, the commutes that maybe we had, the landscape today has changed completely. The world has been forever changed, and our expectations have evolved with it. Employees truly have a new worth it equation, and there is no going back from that. Meeting these new employee expectations will require a mindset shift. that considers the experience that we've all shared over the last 2 years. Leaders in the strongest and most competitive companies are going to create a culture that embraces flexibility and prioritizes employee well-being, understanding that this is going to be a competitive advantage in the marketplace and in the employee pool, the work pool, and to build a thriving organization and to drive long-term growth. Okay, you might recognize this gentleman, Satya Nadella, Chairman and CEO of Microsoft. Satya recently remarked that hybrid work is among the most profound changes in the workplace that we have seen in over a generation. We all feel it. We know that we are not going to go back to working the way we did in 2018 any more than we're going back to the way we worked in 1988, right? So for a long time through the course of the pandemic, organizations were asking themselves, is hybrid work coming? That is no longer the question. Now we are asking ourselves 3 questions. What do we need to do to be ready? What is the right solution for our permanent environment in hybrid work? And what will success look like in hybrid work? How are we going to measure and define success? The fluid experience will be realized across a continuum of spaces, where extreme flexibility allows people to choose where and when they work based on their individual needs, meaning meetings won't be tied to any one location. Some people will be remote and some will be in the office, and with an increasingly mobile workforce, some will be on the go. That means that now, more than ever, people need collaboration experiences that put everyone on equal footing, whether they join the meeting from a conference room, a home office, or on the go. And I'll insert a personal anecdote here. 20 years ago, I left my office job and I had a desk and a computer and monitors and a desk phone, and everything just worked. And the internet was on every day, and I didn't have to think about where it was coming from or if it was going to work. There was a printer. I love to reference that. I think it's Progressive Insurance commercial where the younger generation is telling their parents that they don't have to print the internet. I needed to print the internet 20 years ago. That is how I consumed my information that I was learning and reading and working on. So overnight, I started working for a company that was then known as Polycom. And I was working in a spare room over my garage. And they shipped me a laptop and an Ethernet cable. And I literally didn't know what to do. I was like, I don't even know. I've never had to work from home. It was the first laptop I'd ever owned. And I was at a big time disadvantage. So to elaborate on that, I worked for a video conferencing company and I was working from home on a laptop. And my meetings were predominantly over video conferencing into meetings where the far end attendees were together in a physical meeting room. They were able to sit across the table from each other and collaborate, and talk, and ask questions. They would maybe chuckle and there'd be a joke that I couldn't hear because I was joining over video. If there was an animated, a dynamic presenter that was walking around the room, I would often lose visual connectivity to the presenter. And if they were writing on a noteboard, a lot of times it was too small for me to see. And I had this tiny little square of real estate on the monitor as a far end video participant. All that to say that everyone in the physical meeting space was at a huge advantage. So if we fast forward to where we are today, that has done a complete 180. Everyone working from home now is at an advantage because we've all become video conferencing experts, right? So whether we're using Microsoft Teams at the desktop or some other application, we're really good at it. We know how to schedule meetings, join meetings, share content, record the meetings. We're all experts now. So what we have to do is consider, now that we're going into a hybrid environment where some people are going to be back in the office, they're going to be at a disadvantage. Okay, so imagine walking into your physical office again, and you have a video conferencing meeting, and you're going to use one of the physical meeting spaces in your office. And you walk in, and there's 5 remote controls on the table, and or maybe a touch panel that was designed 5+ years ago, and you don't know how to start the meeting. And maybe there's one person who in the office that does, but they're working from home that day, or they are on their lunch break. Statistically, it takes 11 minutes to get a meeting started today in a physical meeting room, which is just not going to work now that we have all become video conferencing experts at our desktop, right? So this is just to elaborate on this idea that we absolutely have to create these collaboration experiences that everyone, regardless of where they're joining from, have an equal experience in the meeting. So one of the really critical things that we learned during the pandemic is that managers within organizations embody and instantiate the culture for every organization. They are a crucial bridge between these evolving employee expectations on one end and priorities that are being set by leadership at the other end. If managers are empowered, they hold the key to lock the true potential of hybrid work. We have to equip them with the training and the resources that they're going to need to manage the transition to hybrid work, because they could have a team that maybe it's 5 or more people and they're all working in different types of spaces. So while policy is being set at the top, leaders need to decentralize decision making and empower managers to make change and establish team agreements for hybrid work that works best for the individuals on their team. And that's how we do it at Microsoft. So beyond that, we need our leaders to establish the why, when, and how of the office. And this means defining the in-person collaboration and being really intentional about creating those team agreements. When to come together in person, because I said so just isn't working anymore. Defining the hybrid meeting etiquette that they're going to use in their organization, and rethinking how physical spaces can play a supporting role. There has to be a compelling reason to make the commute. According to our data, 67% of employees want more in-person work or collaboration post-pandemic. An organization's willingness and ability to offer hybrid work where they can do both is increasingly connected, this is important, to outcomes for employee recruitment and retention. The lived experience over the last 2 years has created permanent change, and new expectations have come along with it. And organizations that fail to define the role of the office risk missing out on the true benefits of hybrid work. So I think I'm not alone when I say people are worn out. I'm one of them. Everyone on this meeting today is worn out from all the shift and everything in the work environment over the last 2 years. Productivity may have increased a lot, but we are masking an exhausted workforce. So when I say that organization and leaders should embrace flexibility for individuals to determine where and when they work, to elaborate on that, for hybrid work to be successful, we have to improve the employee experience in the hybrid work model. And that means setting boundaries for our teams. So as we begin to travel again, I'm flying from one side of the country to the other, over the last few months and into next year. We have to account for those commute times. So I'm sure you can all relate. My calendar is booked every hour of every day, usually in 30-minute increments. And a lot of times I'm double booked, sometimes triple booked in those windows. And that's not because I'm special or popular. That's just how it is these days, right? I'm sure your calendars all look the same. So we have to empower each other to set boundaries and allow each other to hit the off switch. So it is not sustainable for me to be scheduled for back-to-back calls while I'm traveling to the airport, in the airport, at a customer meeting, at a conference, et cetera, while still trying to manage these calls. So as the world has started to open back up, people want flexibility in their work style. I don't think we're ever going to go back to a 100% in the office environment. Hybrid work is here to stay. It's absolutely our future. And 73% of employees want flexible remote options. Okay, this to elaborate that flexible work doesn't have to mean always on. So allowing your teams to create team agreements about when and where they work, hitting the off switch is extremely important. We saw an increase of 252% increase in meetings that's just for 1 week. And that's meetings where you are on a team call. And then there was a 32% increase in received chats during the meeting time. So that means that while we're in a meeting, our 5th, 6th, 7th meeting of the day, maybe while we're traveling, we're also getting a 32% higher amount of chats during those meetings. So that's the reason that we are exhausted, right? We're masking this exhausted workforce because we are multitasking, and this peak appears to be the new standard. So we have to create new norms around flexible work to reduce times spent in meetings. We have to be intentional about setting boundaries to avoid burnout. And this is for employees at every level of every type of organization. And this is critical to establishing a sustainable hybrid work practice. Okay, so organizations that thrive going forward are going to empower their employees to define how and when they work. And they're going to embrace giving them the flexibility needed to do so. Today, employees at every level and every market prioritize relationships, inclusion, and well-being. Those are their key factors and how they are measuring success for hybrid work. So whether it's collaborating with people outside of your organization or giving you the flexibility to work where, when, and how you want, these improvements address the new expectations that people have for the workplace. The pandemic accelerated business and culture trends across every industry and every market across the world. What's amazing, as I earlier mentioned, is that we all did this together at the same time. And that's everyone on the entire planet. And we've come to realize that the future looks different. And some of the changes that we saw over the last 2 years are here to stay. They're permanent. Recently, Microsoft published its annual Work Trend Index. This includes findings from over 31,000 people in 31 different countries. So our findings, in part, find that the great reshuffling is far from over. So for employees literally everywhere, the worth it equation, or what they're willing to give up in exchange for their career, has changed. And it's become critical to their decision-making about where they work and whether to stay. And as businesses and organizations in every market, healthcare, education, retail, manufacturing, as they continue to prepare for the return to work, hybrid work and how those companies will implement it is top of mind for employees. Meeting rooms are critical to this equation, and we're likely going to see investments coming from every type of organization in the field to updating and creating new spaces and new technology to support hybrid world and these common equal collaboration opportunities as well. So rebuilding social capital, it looks different in the hybrid world. Leaders may see the return to the office as the only solve for rebuilding the social capital that we've lost over the past couple of years. How many of you, I fall into this category, started a new role during the pandemic or started a new job at a completely different company and were onboarded 100% virtually? That was intense, especially being onboarded at a company the size of Microsoft. You can imagine the onboarding in person is intense, right? There's a lot of learning, a lot of steps to the onboarding process, but doing it virtually was difficult. So we as leaders have to prioritize time for building to happen, understanding that the remote workers and the newly onboarded employees will need extra support. When I was hired at Microsoft 9 months ago, I was given, on my first day on the job, I was given an onboarding buddy. And I love that term because it reminds me of like your first day of kindergarten when the teacher, made sure that you were assigned a buddy to help navigate the day. And truly, it was so valuable to me just to have someone that I knew on my team in this big new world that I was entering completely virtually, that person, my buddy, could tell me where to go. I could answer questions on the fly using, Teams chat, and we could do quick Teams calls. So that's something that we really need to help organizations understand that they're going to need to prioritize offering those types of resources to new employees and remote employees. So we know that managers play a crucial role in fostering close team bonds, but they also act as dot connectors. So it might be more common for people who have been onboarded to a new company completely virtually. Do they wonder, do I have the same type of growth opportunities in this company as people that are working in the office? So the managers that we want to help bridge the gap between employees and leadership have to act as dot connectors so that the remote and hybrid people can broaden their network within organizations so that there isn't this gap in opportunity. So in a hybrid world, it's up to leaders to help all employees prioritize time to build relationships with additional support for remote and newly onboarded employees. Our research shows that those are the most at risk of being left behind. Okay, so that is, where we were a year ago. We're making this shift into hybrid work, and this is what Microsoft has found in our research and what we recommend as critical priorities for organizations to be successful in hybrid work. There are some companies that have already started making this shift into hybrid work. And we did a pulse report roughly 3 months ago to start collecting data points from those companies that have already shifted to at least a partial hybrid work environment. And what we found is that there is a big gap. And they may be months into implementing hybrid work, and not everyone agrees on how it's going. Employees and employers are, I'm sorry, just a second here. There's a gap, obviously. Employees are embracing hybrid and flexible work, and they are rejecting a return to the hustle culture, the hustle and grind culture. But at the same time, leaders are yearning for the office life of 2019. So you can picture it. We've all, been the office worker. So the hallways are busy and noisy, and the break rooms are full, and there's coffee overflowing. But amid this pandemic and this new structure of hybrid work, and what can only be described as one of the strangest recessions that we've ever seen, business leaders must contend with the rising, shrinking budgets and, paradoxically, a talent marketplace that remains incredibly tight. So what we found as going through this data and research. In fact, we surveyed 20,000 people in 11 countries, and we analyzed literally trillions of Microsoft 365 productivity signals, along with articles posted on LinkedIn about people's science findings and work trend indexes. The data points to 3 urgent pivots, not optional, not something to consider, urgent pivots to drive alignment and empowerment and engagement in the new way that we work. Because we know for a fact, right, we can all agree that when employees thrive, organizations flourish. We know that one thing is clear. Thriving employees are what will give organizations at every level and every market a competitive advantage in today's dynamic market. And that's a quote directly from Satya Nadella. Okay, the first pivot. I love this data and what this research found for us. So productivity paranoia. I think we're all going to be able to take something away from this section. Okay, 85%, and hold on with me because I'm going to be throwing a lot of numbers at you, okay? But it's really fascinating. So don't worry about jotting anything down. I can make sure you guys have a copy of this if you're interested in it, and I'm capturing some of the data that we're going to go through. So 85% of leaders say that the shift to hybrid work has made it challenging to have confidence that employees are being productive. And as some organizations have started to use technology to track activity rather than impact, employees are lacking context on how and why they're being tracked, which can undermine trust and lead to productivity theater, meaning workers are joining virtual meetings that they know aren't meaningful or relevant, maybe sending emails at strategically selected times just to appear that they are working long enough and hard enough. And this has led to productivity paranoia, where leaders fear that lost productivity is due to employees not working, even though hours worked and the number of meetings and other activity metrics have increased big time, right? Many leaders, there we go. Many leaders and managers are missing the old visual cues that we mentioned. What it meant, visual cues that told us that someone was being productive. They can't see who's hard at work by walking down the hall or past the conference room. Compared to in-person managers, hybrid managers are more likely to say that they struggle to trust their employees to do their best work. And they report that having less visibility into the work their employees do. And as employees feel the pressure to simply prove they are working, this digital overwhelm and exhausted workforce is soaring. Productivity paranoia risks making hybrid work unsustainable. And we as leaders in every organization need to pivot from worrying about whether our people are working enough to helping them focus on doing the work that's most important. Excuse me, important. Okay, this is fascinating. There is a stark disconnect between the portion of leaders who say they have full confidence in their team's productivity, that's 12% of leaders are confident. The portion of employees who report they are totally productive at work is 87%. I mean, it's a complete opposite ends of the spectrum. People are working more than ever, while leaders, already worried by signals of a macroeconomic decline, are questioning if their employees are being productive. The majority of employees, that 87% I mentioned, report that they are productive at work. And the productivity signals across Microsoft 365 continue to climb. This past spring, we found that the number of meetings per week had increased, that 252% that I mentioned earlier, globally for the average Microsoft Teams user since the start of the pandemic. There is no indication that this trend is going to be reversed. So this suggests, again, that peak that we're experiencing right now is the new baseline. So one thing is clear. We know, again, that thriving employees are what will give organizations a competitive advantage. On top of an already high meeting load that we're all experiencing, we have overlapping meetings being double booked. That has increased by 46% per person in the last year. and this is really interesting. Users are flooded with meeting invites. So, and even as the overall meeting acceptance rate has remained fairly steady, maybe I think it's grown by less than 3%, declines of meetings and tentative RSVPs have soared in the past 2 years, 84% and 216% respectively. So 216% of meeting invites are being replied to as tentative. And this is because there is a strain. In an average week, 42% of participants are multitasking during meetings, except for everyone listening to me right now, right? And they're actively sending emails or chats. That doesn't include reading incoming emails and pings and working on non-meeting files or web activity. In addition to this, 48% of employees and over half of managers report that, guess what? They are already burned out at work because of the strain of the last 2 years. So as we are going through and prioritizing, it has to go beyond simply reordering this overflowing to-do list. Leaders need to create clarity and purpose for their people and aligning work with the company mission and team goals. And defining what work doesn't matter is just as important as defining what does. And in a world where everything is important, nothing is, right? We've reached a point of diminishing returns, which is like the one thing I remember from economics class in college. So due to overwork and overwhelm, we are highly productive, or we are highly busy, low productivity. And if leaders don't intervene, we put productivity in jeopardy. And closing the feedback loop is the key to retaining talent. Employees who feel that their companies use their feedback to drive change are more satisfied, 90% more satisfied, compared to those who believe that their companies don't drive change. And the employees who think that their companies drive change based on their feedback, those employees are more than two times as likely to consider leaving in the next year. I think I misspoke. Those who think their companies are not driving change based on their feedback are 2 times as likely to consider leaving in the next year. So, one thing that Microsoft does really well is they have increased the employee signal feedback, the surveys that we fill out, at a more regular interval. So at least every 6 months, we are giving leadership and managerial feedback to our teams, because that helps keep a pulse on your people, obviously. And it helps empower managers and leaders to actively listen and coach and make better decisions to improve the overall performance and well-being of their teams. We all have our list of OKRs. Every day we know what our priorities have been assigned to us when we go into work every day, but it is helpful for leaders to establish no KRs, because knowing what the important work to do is just as important as knowing what work is not important for me to do. Oh, and I'll make one more note about this slide, is this second bullet, create and reinforce a culture that rewards employees' impact, not just activity, or we risk people, this is a quote, LARPing their jobs. And I had to Google what LARPing meant. Maybe I'm the only one on this call today that didn't know what that meant. And then I had to confirm it with my 14-year-old who plays Dungeons and Dragons, but basically it's role playing. So we're pretending to work. It kind of goes back to that productivity theater, right? Okay, the second pivot that we need to urgently address is to embrace the fact that people come into the office for each other. The return to the office has been a struggle at many different types of organizations. And some employers tried it and then dialed it back completely because they figured out that this one size fits all policy failed to generate a big return to the office. So how can leaders inspire people to prioritize in-person time together? The data that we found shows that people come together and they come into the office for each other to recapture what they miss, the social connection of being with other people, the people on their team, their friends at work. In other words, this rebuilding of social capital that we talked about earlier is a powerful lever for bringing people back into the office, and we need to capitalize on that. The data also shows, and it reveals that a better way to bring people back together and engage and energize them is connecting with colleagues to create, key motivation for working in person. 84% of employees would be motivated by the promise of socializing with coworkers, while 85% would be motivated by rebuilding team bonds. This is huge. I haven't worked in an office, since 20 years ago when I started working in the spare room over my garage. But when I was in the office, I really enjoyed having, the camaraderie with my work friends and the occasional happy hour, or even if it was a lunch and learn. That was the fun part of my job. I enjoyed my work, but that was really, truly the reason that I loved going into the office every day. And 85%, just another fact that I'll share with you, 85% of people would be more motivated, or that they would be more motivated to go into the office more frequently if they knew their direct team members would be there. So not just saying, okay, well, half the office comes in on Tuesday, Thursday, and the other half comes in Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Rather being intentional in saying, okay, well, this team, this Microsoft Teams team, they want to see their direct teammates, so let's have all of them together come in the office on Tuesday and Thursday. So being a little more intentional about who comes in when. Am I the only one on this call that loves charts? I love charts and I love data like this. I find this fascinating. So younger generations, Gen Z, millennials, they are more likely to aspire to be their own boss. 70%, 76% of people in those categories say that that's a goal. Versus almost half of the older generations who say that that's a goal for them. This is so important. The younger generations are also more likely to say that they'd stay at their current company longer if the company gave them the flexibility to pursue side projects within the organization or businesses for additional income outside of work. This past spring, when we were doing a lot of our research, we found that over half of these younger generations were likely to consider changing jobs in the next year. So that great reshuffling, far from over, right? Employers can't ignore this. It's the next wave of the workforce. In the US alone, Gen Z employees are projected to make up 30% of the workforce by 2030. And another key factor is that employees are transitioning at jobs at a faster pace than other generations. So they're hopping, from different types of jobs or roles or different companies altogether faster than the older generations are. There is a desire among employees to reconnect with coworkers, as we mentioned, and that dovetails really well with the powerful organizational need to rebuild social capital. So let's leverage that. Almost 70% of business decision makers say that ensuring cohesion and social connections within their teams has been a moderate to major challenge due to the shift to hybrid work. And employees are feeling this acutely, with roughly half saying that their relationships outside of their immediate work group have weakened by a strong margin, and they feel really disconnected from the company as a whole. So when we're looking at this social capital, the office isn't the only answer. We have to consider that technology also plays a critical role in creating connection, wherever, whenever, and however people work. I've been on board for just over 9 months, and I have met each person on my direct team. Maybe it hasn't even been twice each. Maybe a couple of my teammates I've met twice and some just once. So how do we create cohesion and a strong bond within a team like mine that's so dispersed? It falls within the technology. So communication is crucial to keeping everyone engaged and informed, right? According to almost 100% of decision makers and employees say that effective communication is among the most critical skills they need in the year ahead. And that's for every generation. Like I mentioned, the office isn't the only answer. Technology and how we distribute technology to allow everyone to have equal footing and the ability to connect with their peers, regardless of where they're working from, is critical to the success and sustainability of hybrid work. Okay, this is my favorite, the third urgent pivot. Re-recruiting your employees. What a concept. I love this idea. I want to be re-recruited, and I've only been here for 9 months, but I'm excited about the concept. So amid macroeconomic headwinds, now is the time for every organization and every market to re-recruit, re-onboard, and re-energize our employees. And the data shows that if people can't learn, they leave. If they can't learn and grow, they're gone. And we're all embracing this new worth it equation, what we're willing to give up for our career. We are increasingly turning to this job hopping, creator economy, side hustles, entrepreneurship to achieve our career goals. It's still a tight labor market, and leaders who were hoping for the tide to turn have been so far disappointed. Rather than ignoring or fighting these trends, the best leaders are going to prioritize learning and development. How lucky could we be to work for an organization that values that, to help both people and to help the business grow? Look at this connection between learning and retention. 76%. That's so high a percentage. 76% of employees say that they would stay at their company longer if they could benefit from more learning and development support. And why wouldn't we want to do that? That is better for the individual, and it's better for the company. If we are building this culture of continuing to educate our teams and our employees, that can only lead to a win-win situation, right? And the number of people who say that they would stay longer if they could learn more is a way higher percentage for decision makers, for people in upper management. In fact, and this is not a surprise, employees consider opportunities to learn and grow their number one driver of work culture. That's a jump from 2019 when it was ranked number 9. So it was barely in the top 10 2 years ago, and now it's number 1. So if we look at that as a whole, we prioritize employee learning and growth, and it presents winning retention formulas for every organization. But if it's neglected, it poses a threat in that retention, right? In the outcomes. So just a quick snapshot. Like I said, I love charts. Across the workforce, in every age group and at every level within their company, employees are hungry for growth opportunities. 56% of employees and 68% of decision makers say that there are not enough growth opportunities in their company to make them want to stay long term. And this is fascinating. Most employees think that learning requires leaving. They think that the only way to learn a new skill or to increase their skill set so that they can improve their career, the only way to do that requires them to leave and change companies. That sentiment increases as people rise through the ranks. So as we go higher in the corporate structure, the percentage grows. So if I'm a VP, the percentage of me believing that the only way for me to learn and have another growth opportunity is to leave. So making it easier for employees to find their next growth opportunity inside the company seems obvious, but every piece of data that we've collected shows that leaders are not prioritizing internal mobility enough. I can tell you as a fact, yes, I was very excited to come to Microsoft as an opportunity, but not having enough growth opportunity in my former company was one of the key reasons that I made the change. So for some roles, the skill transformation is even more dramatic. And I think this is my last data slide. So keep hanging with me, guys. I just have a couple more minutes, and then we're going to get into, I'm going to show some cool videos with some new announcements. So for some roles, the skills transformation is even more dramatic. So the top 10 skills for roles like project managers, engineers, IT professionals, the skill set has changed 70% just since 2015. So if you have kids in college, make sure that they go into those fields, because it is highly employable, because they're learning the new skill sets faster than the people in the workforce are. Nearly half of employees, though, say that neither their immediate manager or their senior leadership prioritize learning and development. And nearly 2/3 of business decision makers say the same. So if we can make learning and growth core to a company experience, an employee experience, it means bringing the right resources and learning experiences into the organization. And we want to recognize that people want opportunities, not just for promotion, but to broaden their skill set. And organizations need to make internal mobility a key priority and help employees view their career as a climbing wall or a playground rather than a ladder. And I absolutely love that idea. Okay, so we have determined, right? Hybrid work is here to stay. I've been talking about it for probably 40 plus minutes now. So what we want to shift to now is looking at Microsoft Teams specifically. How does Microsoft Teams help us meet these new demands of the hybrid work? So how do we evolve our physical meeting spaces to meet these new expectations? What technologies are right for the organization, and what practices should we adopt to thrive, not survive, but thrive in hybrid work? I lied, one more data slide. This one will be fast. Okay, so for a lot of organizations, over half, in fact, in the marketplace, Microsoft Teams is the place where it all happens. Over 54% of organizations have standardized on Microsoft Teams, and 67% of CIOs are expected to standardize within the next 3 years. So Microsoft Teams is the app at the center of Microsoft 365. And with more than 270 million monthly active users, Teams has absolutely changed how people work more than any other app in the last 20 years. Just in the last year, Microsoft has introduced more than 450 new Teams capabilities to transform meeting culture and keep everyone in the flow of work. So obviously, Microsoft is invested in developing our products and applications to, again, not just survive hybrid work, but to thrive and help organizations continue to grow and improve their cultures within hybrid work. Okay, so the transition from space to space, if we're looking back at our physical offices, might seem complex, but it's made seamless as you can unify all of these different types of spaces and different types of users with Microsoft Teams. So let's quickly define what a Microsoft Teams room solution is. So you know what Microsoft Teams is. If you don't, it's a desktop app where you can schedule meetings, join meetings easily with a one-click to join functionality. It's, you know, we can share content and record meetings, and that's Microsoft Teams. And what a Microsoft Teams room solution allows you to do, it is a purpose-built hardware solution that allows you to extend the experience that we're all familiar with at the desktop into a physical meeting space. So there's no more walking into a physical meeting space and trying to decipher which of the 5 remote controls I need to use to get my meeting started. There's a touch panel, and I immediately recognize the join meeting button that is displayed on the touch panel. So there is a full portfolio of Microsoft Teams devices based on your type of workspace, the size of the workspace, the type of work style, or the type of content that you're sharing. And again, it extends the experience that we have at the desktop into the physical conference room. And it gives every participant equality in the meetings. You saw in the video about Front Row from our previous Jupyter presentation, that really gives every user the exact same real estate on the monitor, the exact, you know, look and feel. So it almost feels like it's this immersive environment, right, where we're all sitting across the table from each other. So what's important to know is across all of these different types of Microsoft Teams devices, you're going to have a consistent and familiar experience. No more wondering how to start a meeting or figuring out how to share content, right? It's inclusive. There are intelligent devices that cameras will zoom in on the speaker, and there are audio innovations that immediately tell me when and who is speaking on the far end. Not to mention, obviously, high standards of quality for audio, video, and sharing experiences. And then a reliable system that's easy to manage and that just works, and that many organizations have already standardized in. We've already seen the success of Microsoft Teams at the desktop. Now we're into this new stage of deploying the hardware purpose-built components to the physical meeting spaces to help support hybrid work. Okay, so we're just really quickly gonna talk about some of the Microsoft announcements. I'm gonna stop sharing really fast. Can you chat me a time, or Nicole, can you tell me how I'm doing on time? And I'm just gonna launch a quick
You
YouTube
have
video.
10 minutes.
Oh, it's perfect. Okay, great. All right, I'm gonna share a couple quick videos. The first one that I'm going to launch is just gonna give you a really good overview of what a Microsoft Teams room is capable of, the flexibility, the inclusivity, and you'll recognize a couple of the components like Front Row that Michael shared with us. So let me see if I can share with audio. Here we go. Share sound, and we're off.
Today's Microsoft Teams rooms bridge the gap between in-person and remote meeting attendees, providing everyone high-quality, inclusive experiences. Going forward, these rooms will deliver more natural and immersive experiences for hybrid work. The focus room will evolve to connect in-person and remote attendees in a more unified experience, with a larger screen where interactions feel more natural as you sit face-to-face across from life-size remote colleagues. A camera placed at eye level to improve eye contact, spatial audio so you hear people's voices from their position on the screen, and to enrich real-time collaboration, meeting chat notes and actions will be at the forefront of all Teams rooms. Larger rooms with more attendees make it challenging for people working remotely to know who is present and who's talking. Teams rooms will deliver a meeting experience where everyone is fully represented and connections feel natural. We have reimagined the meeting room to bring people face-to-face with remote colleagues and unlock more space for people, content, and collaboration. Technology will fade to the background, with premium microphones hidden in the ceiling. Intelligent camera technology will bring in-room participants clearly into view through individual video streams. And spatial audio will help remote participants establish presence with a virtual seat in the room. All so that you have more authentic connections with everyone in the meeting. Our vision for meetings is about leveling the playing field for everyone, where remote and in-person attendees are represented equally and everyone can collaborate without compromise.
Okay, so hopefully I'm back. So I want to close out of that really quickly, and I'm going to share a couple more. So, sorry. There we go. Okay, so Microsoft Ignite was last week, and I mentioned that it was really good timing, and I was under the gun to learn a lot. So these announcements were big and included a lot of kind of nitty-gritty details, and I spent a lot of time over the last few days going through and learning and studying so that we could talk about it at a high level today with you. So I mentioned over the last year alone, Microsoft Teams, we have developed over 450 application improvements to improve the app and the hybrid work and remote worker experience. But more announcements, more updates are coming. So one of the biggest announcements that you may have heard was our new partnership with Cisco. And I think, the earth shook for a second when that announcement came across the wire last week because nobody thought we would ever see that. But I think it was easy to anticipate and expect it when you think about it because the two markets are getting so big, it just makes sense for us to partner together. So that announcement is huge, and it just continues to show the amount of device manufacturers that recognize they need to integrate and support this Microsoft Teams user interface. So companies who have standardized on Cisco, have existing Cisco devices, are going to be able to run WebEx and Microsoft Teams simultaneously. So we're just going to continue to see this prevalence of the Microsoft Teams interface in the marketplace. There are a couple of other exciting announcements that I want to show you, some really cool features coming from Teams early in 2023. So let me queue up those, got those other videos here really quickly to show you, and then I'll drop because I think I'm running out of time, but maybe we may have time for a couple Q&A.
New ways of work hold so much promise. The connection and energy of engaging with coworkers in the office, combined with the ease and flexibility of working remotely. But new ways of work create new challenges, because while we have evolved, our workplaces have not. But change brings opportunity. Opportunity for a new solution that coordinates where work gets done. Prioritizing your time, maximizing in-person connection, and fostering a workplace of interaction and serendipity. Opportunity for technology that evolves alongside us and helps create places that support new ways of working. A new solution that helps reshape the office experience with intelligent technology. A new solution that optimizes where you work to be more dynamic and sustainable. Introducing Microsoft Places. Transform your space into a place. In the office, at home, and everywhere in between.
Okay, so I think that just continues to show how much we recognize that we need additional tools to help us be successful in the hybrid work space. So I will wrap by saying that, I know that a lot of this presentation, most of it, in fact, was about market trends and research that Microsoft has done for how we can all be successful with hybrid work. But I encourage you to reach out to Lightworks or to your Microsoft partner account manager or any of the device partners that have presented today to learn more about Microsoft Teams and the Teams Rooms devices, so that we can, tell you a little bit more about the hardware and some of the additional features and benefits. But my ultimate goal today was to talk about hybrid work and all of the amazing and fascinating data that we have been able to find. So I'll wrap with there. And were there any questions?
Well, Amanda, I'm not surprised that was superb. Thank you. I do have a question here. Are you able to say how soon we might benefit from the Microsoft Cisco partnership? We have users begging to be able to use Teams on our WebEx room kits in a way that is easy and doesn't cost a fortune in licensing. This is a participant question.
Yeah, so that is in line with everything that we're hearing too. So unless Chris has heard otherwise, it's definitely something that's going to be early 2023, so even as early as next quarter. What I can tell you is that customers who have purchased Cisco devices in the last 2 years will be able to ASAP activate a Teams license. So let's talk more about that. So they have to have the WebEx license, but then they can also, thank you, Chris, they can also run the Teams activation license. So I would start, I will follow up with Nicole and the team here, listing the Cisco devices that will support this. And you can start making some phone calls, find out who has purchased those devices in the last 2 years and talk to them about this new up and coming capability.
Okay, excellent. Any more questions? I just had a quick question about that last video. Was it Microsoft Places?
Yes.
It was I love the video, but it was a little vague. Can you tell us a little more?
Welcome to early announcements from Microsoft a week after Ignite.
I'm intrigued.
I know, me too. I was watching the video. I watched it like 5 times because I'm like, oh my gosh, I want all of this. So that's again something that's coming in 2023. So more information is going to be released, but it absolutely is in development where we are trying to transform, these meeting rooms into actual meeting places where we recognize how the rooms are being used, data on how the rooms are being leveraged, when they're being leveraged, are they not being used enough? And then how do we communicate and broadcast messaging about those meetings to every type of user, no matter where they are? I especially loved the 5-second blip in the video that showed, a woman going into the office and she got an alert that said, your meeting has been canceled. You can add 40 minutes to your calendar. That's a game changer. You know what I mean? So yeah, some more information to follow on that. I will absolutely keep everybody updated. If we are not connected on LinkedIn, please connect with me because I am always doing posts and updates on all things Microsoft Teams and Microsoft Teams Rooms. So if we're connected, you'll be one of the first to know.
Yes, and we can attest to that. We are connected on LinkedIn, and we've got some excellent information and updates from Amanda. Thank you so much for this. This has been more than informative. Your enthusiasm is contagious. I love hearing you speak and present. It
I'm
is
so
now
glad.
time for our giveaway. I'm